Last September, the South Carolina coast took a beating like never before. Hurricane Hugo crashed onto the shore, causing more damage than any other storm in U.S. history, leaving thousands homeless.
Now, 5 months later, how are the surviving people surviving down there? We sent Tracy Savage and videographer Chuck Hamlin to the East Coast to bring back some follow-up reports. They arrived in Charleston this afternoon, and Tracy joins us now live via satellite with some first impressions. Tracy?
Well, Kid, you know, I was told before we came down here that we should expect to see a lot of areas that look like war zones. And I have to admit, in the short time that we've been here, we've seen a lot of destruction. In fact, the barrier islands just off the coast are gone. They've been virtually wiped out. But the first thing that caught my attention was the lack of greenery. Charleston was once called an urban forest, and Hugo has wiped out about 75% of the trees. In fact, you can see that building there back in the background? Well, about 6 months ago, you couldn't see that building because of all of the trees, but they're now all gone. Now, in downtown Charleston, the historic buildings and homes all look pretty good on the outside, but it's in the inside where all the trouble is. Many homes suffered such severe water damage, flooding damage, and roof damage, and many are still unoccupied today. But Ken, Cheryl, I'm finding out that Charleston really is surviving, in fact, quite well, especially when you consider this is where the storm passed through. One look at those pictures on the night of September 21st, you'll see just how destructive that hurricane was. This fragile coast is no match for the 30-foot waves, the winds, the torrents of rain. It pounded the South Carolina shore at 135 miles an hour, crashing into buildings, splintering trees. It turned the historic community of Charleston upside down.
Oh, all the power lines, all the trees, all the big trees, either broken midway up or ripped out of the ground, across the road. It's just total destruction.
That was the night it hit. The next day, the residents really began to assess the damage and began to dig out. The devastation was widespread. 29 people were killed, 50,000 left homeless. In downtown Charleston, 30 buildings were destroyed. Beachfront homes up the Carolina coast crumbled. The Red Cross immediately began what was to be the largest relief effort in history. And of course, that relief effort is still going on today. Now, tomorrow, there is a wonderful story to tell, a story of charity. Some folks from the Miami Valley are here, and tomorrow they will be dedicating a home that they helped build for some Charleston family that was left homeless after Hurricane Hugo. Of course, I'll have that report tomorrow night live at 7 o'clock. For now, I'm Tracy Savage in Charleston. Cheryl?
Thank you, Tracy, for the report. Some people who lost their jobs when General Motors closed its Norwood plant may have the last laugh. A federal judge has ruled that GM must send more severance pay to 270 former employees of the plant. Judge Carl Rubin found that the Norwood workers were entitled to greater severance pay benefits than they received. The judge's ruling came in response to a class action lawsuit filed in behalf of the employees who each worked at least 10 years for General Motors. GM closed the Norwood Auto Assembly plant in 1987.
A story of charity and love. A family that was left homeless after Hurricane Hugo now has a brand new home that's thanks to some caring Miami Valley residents. We sent Tracy Savage and videographer Chuck Hamlin to Charleston to report on life there after the hurricane and also to bring us this special story. Tracy joins us now live via satellite from the coastal town of Awanda.
Well, 3 months ago, this beautiful house was not here, and the house that had been here was wiped away by Hurricane Hugo. It left Joe and Joyce Brown and their 5 kids homeless. Shortly after Hurricane Hugo hit, some folks from the Miami Valley and Sonia and Greenville decided they wanted to help out. So they met up with Joe and Joyce Brown, and they began to build this beautiful new home. They call it a miracle house, the House of Love. Some members of the Ansonian Church of God in Darke County made several trips from Greenville to Awanda to build this house from the ground up. When the project was announced to the church congregation, donations and supplies poured in. The Browns lived in this trailer while the construction was going on, but now the project is complete and the Browns have a brand new home. We are now inside this new house. They say it's a house full of love. It is also full of people. About 30 people from Greenville and Ansonia are here now to formally dedicate this beautiful new home. I'd like you to meet Joe and Joyce Brown, the new owners. And this is Everett Hawker, the gentleman, one of two gentlemen that got this project off the ground. Now, Everett, I understand you have a formal presentation to make. Please go ahead.
Yes. Joe and Joyce, on behalf of all these people from the Ansonia Church of God, we'd like to give you a plaque of dedication to this home for you to hang on your wall. And let me read it to you. This home was built by men and women in action for the glory of God from the Ansonia Church of God, Ansonia, Ohio, dedicated February the 24th, 1990, for Joe and Joyce Brown.
Joyce, Joe, did you ever think 5 months ago you'd be living in a gorgeous home again like this?
No, ma'am. I didn't have a chance. Ain't had a chance.
Joyce?
I had faith in God that he would perform a miracle for us. But I knew that it'd take a miracle. And God sent these lovely people to do such wonderful job. They did it by the Spirit of God, and I want to thank God for them tonight.
All right, very good. Thank you and congratulations. Everett, you got this project off the ground. Charleston, South Carolina is a long way away from the Miami Valley. What brought you to do this?
Well, when God led us down here, the two of us, we stood down here and we prayed about this home and that it would be built. We had $700 in our pocket at that time, and we went back to Ohio and told the people about it, and we raised $18,500 from the Dark County area to build this home, and today it's complete now, and they're going to sleep in it tonight.
All right, terrific. Definitely an act of charity, an act of love, a beautiful new home 5 months after Hurricane Hugo. Reporting live near Charleston, South Carolina, I'm Tracy Savage. Back to News Center 7.
Heartening, isn't it?
Very nice story.
Just ahead, an important deadline for smokers.
News Center's Chris Ingalls has a story when we come back.
And as I said, rush hour tomorrow morning's a little dicey, so you'll want to check with us in a couple of minutes to get the details on that.
Okay, Dave, thank you.
Okay, this story will be familiar to you, Dave. The roving News Center team of Tracy Savage and videographer Chuck Hamlin has been in South Carolina the last few days. They're taking a look at the East Coast 5 months after Hurricane Hugo. You may remember the eye of that storm passed directly over Charleston, causing more damage than any other storm in U.S. history.
Well, this evening, Tracy Savage profiles that city with the help of someone who knows it very well.
One way to really find out about what's going on in a community is to talk to the locals. Earlier, I caught up with an 8th-generation Charlestonian. She knows this town inside and out. When she talks about Charleston, she really gets carried away.
You notice this house coming here to your left? Oh, yeah. They just restored this house last summer, had already finished it and everything. Well, the hurricane blew the whole top of the roof off, so they had to go.
Sherry Babb gives guided tours in Charleston. She usually talks about the history, but in the last few months, people have wanted to know about Hugo.
There was 5 feet of water down through here in most areas.
The downtown area was shut down for about 2 weeks. No electricity, no water. Then the rebuilding began.
The first month, all you heard was chainsaws every single day. Not as near as quiet as it usually is either, because there's so many trucks and stuff down here, so many carpenters. At times during the winter right now, there's more people on top of the roofs than there is walking on the sidewalks.
As a tour guide, Sherry is in and around the downtown Charleston area every single day, and she's seen the renovation slowly begin.
Especially in the last month to 6 weeks. You've got these big containers all over the place, and people pulling all their stuff out of the house and stuff. This is some more hurricane damage here.
The buildings will be replaced, but this town that was once called an urban forest lost something much more precious, 3/4 of its tree population.
We got a long ways to go. They say it's going to take at least a couple of years before everything will be back pre-Hugo stage.
All of this destruction is taking its toll on Charleston economically. As the tourism season is just now getting underway, the city is working overtime to be ready to try to recoup their losses. Tomorrow night I'll have more on this as we continue our look at life after Hugo. In South Carolina, I'm Tracy Savage reporting.
Well, it looks like the traffic's picked up in Charleston, at least.
Sure does.
Yeah. Look forward
Hope they
to
make it back.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Nicaragua will soon have a new leader now that voters there have rejected Sandinista rule. Details coming up in your first look at the world. The state of Ohio sends more people to South Carolina than any other state in the country besides North Carolina. It's a popular vacation site. But has the East Coast been able to bounce back from Hurricane Hugo?
Tracy Savage, videographer Chuck Hamlin are just back from a 3-day tour of the coastline. Tracy joins us now live to tell us what she saw and what pictures we'll be seeing in her reports the rest of this week. Tracy?
Well, Ken, they are definitely reshaping the South Carolina coastline. 5 months later, you can still see incredible devastation along with some remarkable reconstruction. We visited the areas hardest hit, starting in Charleston and working our way north to Myrtle Beach. Five months after Hugo pounded the South Carolina coastline, the beaches are still breathtaking.
Just look around and listen. It's so quiet, it's so peaceful, and you can just hear the ocean waves rolling in. It's very soothing.
But South Carolina's claim to fame will, in some places, never be the same. Some of the destruction is awesome. The state of South Carolina lost 75% of its tree population. At first sight, the city of Charleston looks pretty good. The tourist season is kicking off with a punch. But 90% of the homes and buildings in the historic district suffered roof damage. Though construction crews from all over the country have been working nonstop, there is still a lot more work to be done. Where you still see the greatest amount of property damage is on the barrier islands, the small coastal retreats sitting north and south of Charleston. Foley Island to the south is slowly rebuilding. About every other home is either wiped out or in bad shape. Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palm, just north of Charleston, looks like a bomb went off. 5 months later, Sullivan's Island is still a disaster area, especially along the waterfront. On every street, there are piles of debris, every home damaged. When the storm came through, this island was vulnerable. It was no match for Hugo's strength.
They say it'll come back. My children feel confident. It won't in my lifetime.
In our 3-day trip, we met many people, including many from the Miami Valley. Lynn, who lives on Foley Island, is from the Oregon District. These two ladies from Vandalia are now living in a residential area north of Charleston. And we caught up with these Carlisle golfing buddies in Myrtle Beach. Now, for the next 4 nights, starting tonight at 6 o'clock, we'll hear from those folks as well as from some of the locals. I'll also bring you detailed reports on some of the areas we visited. Ken, Cheryl?
Okay, Tracy, very interesting. Thank you.
Still to come from News Center's first edition, tonight's health segment and more.
Every spring, thousands of Ohioans vacation in Charleston, South Carolina, and the city is hoping this year will be no different. Remember, Charleston was devastated by Hurricane Hugo 5 months ago. The city's been working frantically ever since to get back in shape. News Center's Tracy Savage spent a couple of days in the historic coastal town. She reports that Hugo's damage may be only physical, not financial.
Charleston is bouncing back, and Hurricane Hugo can actually take some of the credit. Out-of-towners are not staying away because of the storm, rather just the opposite.
We came out of curiosity more this time to see what it was like and what happened in September.
Well, there's a lot of people from out of state, too, I've noticed, more than ever here now.
I've had a couple people come down here to say that's why they came down here, just to see the damage that was done by the hurricane.
But 5 months later, you won't see much destruction in Charleston. After the coast of South Carolina lost most of its fall tourist season because of Hugo, an estimated $400 million loss, the city of Charleston set up a Save the Season task force to make sure the historic town was ready for the spring.
After the storm, immediately after, the place looked like a war zone. It really did. I mean, you just couldn't believe it. But the city has really come roaring back. We had crews from all over the country working here. We had linemen from 16 states.
If the tourism continues the way it started, Charleston should be in pretty good shape. All of the hotels are booked solid this weekend. The restaurants have been packed. This city is busy. And the locals have confidence in their city, including this former Vandalia, Ohio resident, now living just north of Charleston.
We've been through hurricanes before, Civil War, earthquakes, you know, floods and a fire that even wiped out the city. And we still keep bouncing back and bouncing back.
Charleston is working on getting that message out. The state of South Carolina is launching its largest ad campaign ever, and a quarter of it is aimed at Ohio. The idea is to convince tourists to come and spend money. In Charleston, Tracy Savage, News Center 7.
And tomorrow night at 6, Tracy reports on how Charleston is getting some help from Miami Valley residents.
Dave Freeman.
5 months after Hurricane Hugo crashed into the East Coast, South Carolina is still calling for help from all over the country. This month, some folks here in the Miami Valley are responding. Tonight, as Tracy Savage and videographer Chuck Hamlin continue their look at the reconstruction of the coast, Tracy reports on how some men from Yellow Springs are lending a new touch to restore an old work of art.
They are recreating art, yet in a way, they are artists themselves. They are stained glass restorers from Yellow Springs, Ohio. They were brought to Charleston to repair the damage at this 100-year-old church, damage caused by Hurricane Hugo.
Well, it's a lot of tedious work. Got to have a lot of patience. It's trying at times, but it's a lot of satisfaction. A lot of the reinforcement braces were broken loose and broken glass. And the original storm windows that were up there, a lot of those are missing. They were blown right off. The large window was held up by cables from falling in. And that was a mess.
A lot of these windows are in such bad shape, they really ought to be replaced. But the Historical Society down here in Charleston doesn't want them to do that. So the Yellow Springs, Ohio crew is literally having to put the windows back together like a jigsaw puzzle.
All these panels here, or the field glass, was broken away, broken down here and separated.
The Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church is an historic landmark. According to the pastor, this was the very first all-black church in all the South.
It was built by our black forefathers and mothers, having just come out of slavery. And to think that they had such artistic taste, you know, it just makes us so proud. So we want to preserve it.
When the light comes through them and all the colors show up inside the nave area here, it's real beautiful.
In Charleston, South Carolina, at the Emmanuel AME Church, Tracy Savage, News Center 7.
That church was lucky. It was damaged but not destroyed. Tomorrow night at 6, Tracy will show us some areas where the folks were not so fortunate. The barrier islands north and south of Charleston were hit the hardest by Hugo. We'll see how the residents there are rebuilding.
News Center 7's Tracy Savage and videographer Chuck Hamlin spent a couple of days along the coast, an area full of destruction and reconstruction.
Foley Beach is considered a Charlestonians' beach. 6.5 blocks wide, the island is where generations of Charleston, South Carolina families have come to spend their summers. Its quiet beauty is what attracted Lynn Hesketh and her husband, formerly residents of the Oregon District in Dayton, Ohio.
Came down on vacation a few years ago, fell in love with Charleston, decided to move into the area.
But Foley Island may now never be the same. Sitting to the south of Charleston, it took the brunt of Hugo's punch.
Finally got authorization to come onto the beach, and when we did, it was devastating. We were both numb, really, from the shock of it.
Lynn's house is in pretty good shape. It wasn't hit that hard by Hurricane Hugo, but many of her neighbors weren't so lucky. All around this coastal island are scenes like this. Many homes too far gone to ever be repaired.
And some of these people had lived here for generations. And so they had memories, childhood memories, and, you know, grandma and great-grandma in these houses.
It's a tragedy that is also being felt on other barrier islands. Sullivan's Island, just to the north of Charleston, is still a disaster area. The city is operating out of trailers. About every other home along the beachfront is either damaged or destroyed.
If you haven't been through it, you can't realize what happened, really.
And farther up the coast, closer to Myrtle Beach, is Pawleys Island. Though most of the wreckage has been cleared away, it still has a long way to go. There is construction going on all of these islands, but building back is a slow process.
The major problem is going to the lumber yard and stuff to get the material you want, because basically everybody and their brothers over there. You got to go through like about probably 4 different lumber yards to actually find what you want.
How long do you think that's going to take?
I think it's going to take a long time. I think maybe we have expectations that it won't take as long, but I think it's going to take years.
If they stayed on, it probably be about maybe 3 years. If they stayed on it, you know, maybe longer.
I have no doubt that it's going to be beautiful again.
Along the east coast of South Carolina, Tracy Savage, News Center 7.
Well, they are still celebrating at the University of Dayton tonight. Everybody's talking about the game.